Hey guys, it's towniesimbuilds here, and welcome back to another episode of The Sims 4 Real Lore. In this series, we explore interesting destinations from around the world, shrouded in history, mystery, and sometimes a little bit of spookiness. Now, as you can tell from the title of today's video, we are examining a mystery that has taken the course of about 2,000 years regarding the very mysterious disappearance of a royal ship tied to China's very first emperor. Before diving into today's video, I do want to note that unfortunately I am not very well versed in Chinese, but I will do my very best to pronounce these different names for you guys. Starting off our tale today, we actually go very far back into ancient Chinese history, roughly into the 3rd century BC. At this time, Qin Shi Huang, before he became emperor, was born in the year 259 BC on the day of February 18th. Now, unfortunately for Qin Shi, he was born during a very tumultuous time in Chinese history, in a period known as the Warring States. At this time, there were several kingdoms that were actually vying for power within China, and at this time, Qin Shi was born in the Qin state of China. Now, as a young boy, Qin Shi was born to a man by the name of 𝗧𝗛𝗓𝗓, who was a rising political and military leader within the Qin state itself. Now, it is said that he actually received the help of a very wealthy merchant by the name of 𝗪𝗚𝗧𝗖𝗛𝗡𝗚, who would then enable him to become king in the later years of his life. Now, unfortunately, due to the ongoing war at the time, 𝗧𝗛𝗓𝗓 would actually become a prisoner of war to the rival state of Zhao. And unfortunately, due to Qin Shi being the next in line to the throne, he was considered an underage king. Now, due to this fact, 𝗧𝗛𝗓𝗓's right-hand man, 𝗪𝗚𝗧𝗖𝗛𝗡, would actually become a regent king. While managing the kingdom itself, 𝗪𝗚𝗧𝗖𝗛𝗡 worked extensively to negotiate with the Zhao state, and fortunately in the year of 250 BC, allowed for the safe return of 𝗧𝗛𝗓𝗓 back to his native Qin state. Now, upon his return, 𝗧𝗛𝗓𝗓 would actually rule for a period of roughly 3 years, alongside his royal chancellor, 𝗪𝗚𝗧𝗖𝗛𝗡, and also Qin Shi's mother and also former concubine, Lady Zhao. Now, unfortunately, tragedy does strike once more, and the king dies ultimately at the age of 34 in the year of roughly 246 BC. At this time, 𝗧𝗛𝗓𝗓's child, Qin Shi, would actually ascend the throne once more at the age of 13. Unfortunately, at this time he was also still underage, so the royal chancellor 𝗪𝗚𝗧𝗖𝗛𝗡 would then serve as the regent king. This regency would last for a period of roughly 8 years, until Qin Shi turned 21 in the year of 238 BC. Now, at this point, the Qin state had become a very strong force to be reckoned with, boasting very strong military and bureaucratic forces, and now under the rule of Qin Shi Huang, proceeded to take down the remaining 6 rival states. Among these rival states, of course, was the former Zhao state, where 𝗧𝗛𝗓𝗓, or Qin Shi's father, was formerly imprisoned. Now, after the course of approximately 17 to 18 years, Qin Shi Huang finally succeeds in capturing all of the remaining states and officially unifies China as one empire. Now, apart from proclaiming to be the first sovereign emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang also brought many new developments and changes to Chinese society itself. Among them, of course, included a very vast reformation of the Chinese government. Gone were the days of feudal lords, and instead was a very powerful and centralized administration. The new empire of China itself was actually divided into 36 different districts, each with its own administrators who would overlook the territory itself. Now, as a way to prevent any means of rebellion, Emperor Qin Shi Huang actually made a very interesting maneuver. Moving forward, all of the nobility, all of the aristocracy, they were actually forced to live within the capital city of Xiangyang. Ultimately, this allowed him to keep an eye on his subordinates, and ultimately discouraged desire for seizing power or control away from the emperor himself. Now, apart from the massive overhaul of the Chinese government, Emperor Qin Shi Huang also brought many new developments as well. These included the construction of new roads, fostering trade and transportation, new standards of measurement for commerce, and also new revisions to the Chinese written language. One of Qin Shi Huang's most famous achievements, however, was actually the unification of the Great Wall of China. The Great Wall had only been partially created during the period of the Warring States, however the wall itself was very broken up and disconnected. Only under Qin Shi Huang's rule was the wall officially completed and connected as one continuous, large fortress. Concurrently with all of his different developments and contributions to Chinese society, Emperor Qin Shi would also begin his travels throughout the empire on what would now be known as the Royal Inspection Tours. Now, the inspection tours overall served a great mixture of different purposes. It allowed the emperor to survey local administrations, it allowed the emperor to attend areas of political and/or economic importance, but most importantly, it also served as a sort of spiritual pilgrimage, if you will. Now, the inspection tours themselves were actually part of a very old tradition mentioned in a work known as the 𝗪𝗟𝗧𝗖𝗛𝗡𝗚. The 𝗪𝗟𝗧, an important work of Confucian literature, actually includes a very particular poem that speaks to the concept of inspection tours themselves, dating back to the ancient period of the Xiā dynasty, predating Qin Shi's time by about 1500 years. Now, within this work, it encouraged rulers to conduct themselves with virtue and optimism, mainly through inspection tours that would bring fortune and prosperity to the people of the land. On a more spiritual note, the teachings of the 𝗪𝗟𝗧𝗖𝗛𝗡 also included a belief in mythological emperors, who in the past also conducted inspection tours, and while doing so visited the 5 sacred mountains of China. Collectively, they are known as Mount Taishan, Mount Huashan, Mount Hengshanbei, Mount Hengshannan, and Mount Songshan respectively, and by visiting these mountains would bring success to the empire as a whole. Now, Qin Shi Huang, being the self-proclaimed first emperor of China, definitely wanted to mirror these mythological emperors himself, and did in fact tour China for a period of 10 years, from 220 BC to 210 BC. Now, upon arriving at each of these mountains, it is said that Emperor Qin Shi would actually perform different rituals and sacrifices upon each of these sacred locations, while also erecting large stone monuments known as steles, detailing all of his accomplishments as emperor. Unfortunately, many of these steles no longer exist. However, there have been different rubbings and etchings taken from the original steles that still exist from the days of ancient China to this very day. Apart from fulfilling bureaucratic and spiritual duties as emperor, many sources actually claim that Qin Shi's inspection tours actually fostered his desire to learn more about alchemy, magic, and mysticism. For years, it is said that Qin Shi had a particular obsession with the idea that he could actually achieve immortality, even through particular magical means. This infatuation stemmed from a constant fear of death. It was known that Qin Shi had been subject to several assassination attempts, likely from hostile enemies that remained in formerly rival states. However, some sources claim that this fear of death actually had plagued his family lineage for years, affecting both his father and grandfather respectively. At some point, however, Qin Shi Huang meets a very interesting man on his final pilgrimage to Mount Langya, a supposed mystic by the name of Zhu Fu. Now, according to legends, upon hearing of Emperor Qin Shi's quest for immortality, Zhu Fu claimed to have a lead on how Qin Shi could, in fact, achieve his goal. Supposedly, he spoke to the emperor of a mystical land known as Penglai, which was collectively a group of 3 spirit mountains located in the Bohai Sea, with Penglai being the most prominent of the 3 mountains. The mountainous area of Penglai was sometimes referred to as a fairy mountain, given that it was supposedly home to a community of very powerful spiritual entities that were sometimes referred to as the Immortals. Now, there was a belief that if one could find the Immortals and present a formidable offering, a special magical herb only existent on the island could then be obtained, granting its consumer everlasting life. Now, some reports say that Qin Shi had actually been aware of this island for a very long time, and for several years had been actively seeking Penglai while on his royal inspection tours. Unfortunately for Emperor Qin Shi, all of his efforts were in vain, and upon trying to hire mystics, magicians, alchemists, and medicine men, they unfortunately were also not able to provide him with an immortal elixir. To make matters even more interesting, there were also some reports that spoke of a man by the name of Anqi Sheng, a sage who lived in the island of Penglai for over 1,000 years and was supposedly the keeper of the elixir of life. Reportedly, Emperor Qin Shi attempted to hire a man by the name of Lu Sheng, who supposedly led an expedition in efforts to locate either Penglai or the 1,000-year-old sage himself. But once more, these efforts were, in fact, in vain. However, with a lot of convincing and purported knowledge, Zhu Fu actually gained a lot of trust and credibility with the emperor himself, and eventually became a royal sorcerer for Emperor Qin Shi Huang. After some time passes, Zhu Fu is actually appointed by the emperor himself on a brand new expedition in an attempt to find Penglai and the mysterious immortal elixir. Reportedly, these expeditions begin once more, roughly in the year of 219 BC. And moving forward, there is certainly a lot of debate and inconsistency regarding a lot of Zhu Fu's travels. Most sources state that Zhu Fu sailed for a period of roughly 9 to 10 years. Now, based on many reports, 𝗧𝗪 claimed that he did in fact locate the mountainous island of Penglai, but for various reasons was unable to dock the ship and access the island itself. Now, among one of the most common obstacles that he did cite was the presence of large fish, which we could assume today to be large whales that were in the area. Now, upon hearing this, Emperor Qin Shi was very determined, and reportedly supplied 𝗧𝗪 with his best archers and a large supply of crossbows as well. Now, in contrast, there were reports saying that 𝗧𝗪's first journey to the Bohai Sea was in fact very successful, that he both located the mountainous area of Penglai and was able to talk to the spirits inhabiting the island. However, with the current offerings that he was provided with from the emperor, unfortunately the spirits denied them, claiming that they were far too little and they were not willing to give him the elixir of life that Qin Shi so desperately wanted. Now, in some versions of the story or in 𝗧𝗪's accounts, these spirits were in fact the immortals that were supposedly inhabiting the island of Penglai. However, in more embellished tales, 𝗧𝗪 actually encounters a powerful sea god, who, much like the immortals, claimed that the offerings were far too little, and once more barred Qin Shi from obtaining the elixir. Now, based on this particular account from 𝗧𝗪, the sea god wanted a very grandiose request, asking for 3,000 virgin men, 3,000 virgin women, and an assortment of China's most talented artisans and craftsmen. Now, to preface this story moving forward, I do want to note that there are several versions of 𝗧𝗪's tale that don't exactly paint the same picture. In many variations, it is said that 𝗧𝗪 actually never found the island or mountainous area of Penglai itself. Unfortunately, many sources back the idea that 𝗧𝗪 wasn't exactly being truthful with his expeditions. That, unfortunately, much like the emperor himself and his predecessor, was ultimately unable to find Penglai and the necessary elixir. Now, as a result, 𝗧𝗪 was resorting to creating very lofty, tall tales in efforts to try and buy time with the emperor and to keep him in a very fabricated lie. Reportedly, he said that there were invisible magical barriers in the ocean, that of course that there were large fish obstructing his way, and also mysterious spiritual beings that unfortunately did not allow him to access Penglai and ultimately the elixir. Now, despite the very fantastical nature of these tales and these explanations provided by 𝗧𝗪, unfortunately the desperation of Emperor Qin Shi Huang is running very strong. He desperately wants this elixir, and ultimately buys 𝗧𝗪's story regarding the sea god or the request of the immortals themselves. Upon doing so, he supposedly supplies 𝗧𝗪 with a fleet of about 60 ships, housing the 3,000 men, the 3,000 women, the assortment of different Chinese artisans and craftsmen, a full-on crew, and of course plenty of food and supplies for this very long journey. Now fully equipped with this very large offering, 𝗧𝗪 heads out with his final expedition, traveling to the Bohai Sea roughly in the year of 210 BC. Unfortunately for Emperor Qin Shi Huang, this would be the very last time he would make contact with 𝗧𝗪, and of course all of the subsequent crew members there as well. Interestingly enough, some sources actually state that 𝗧𝗪 himself remained in contact with the emperor for a good portion of his journey. However, upon crossing part of the Bohai, there would be no further messages or correspondence with this giant fleet of ships, led by 𝗧𝗪 himself. Because of this, many actually theorize that 𝗧𝗪 had become preoccupied with his very large failure, and ultimately became concerned for his life and his status in the royal court, not wanting to face the emperor empty-handed. With this same large amount of fear, it is possible that he also convinced his fleet to escape from China altogether, to save the lives of all those on board, and potentially start life anew in another location. While the disappearance of such a large fleet should be a grave cause for concern, Emperor Qin Shi Huang was actually on his 5th royal inspection tour on the same year of 210 BC, and unfortunately there would be a very dark twist of fate in his very near future. Unfortunately, at this time, many Chinese alchemists believed that jade and mercury were both elements to immortality, and as a result crafted very special mercury pills for the emperor to consume. Naturally, the emperor himself, believing in the work of his alchemists, did in fact take the pills, and as a result, died not long after. Despite not being able to find the elixir for immortality, Emperor Qin Shi Huang still lived a very long life, especially when looking at the ancient Chinese life expectancy at this time. At this particular era of China, it was normal for a person to pass away roughly between the ages of 20 to 30 years of age. However, he did in fact surpass that, dying at the age of 49. And obviously, had he not taken the mercury tablets, probably would have lived even longer than that. Even in death, Qin Shi left behind a very important national treasure, also known as the ancient Terracotta army. Approximately 2,000 years later, in the month of March in 1974, a group of Chinese peasants unearthed a very mysterious clay figure while attempting to dig a well in the modern northwestern province of Shaanxi. Upon extended excavation over the past few decades, archaeologists located a total of 600 pits, featuring thousands of life-size figures, featuring terracotta warriors, horses, chariots, and even royal servants, all buried beneath the dry soil in what was formerly Qin Shi's imperial capital of Xiangyang. Now, with a strong belief in the afterlife with what Qin Shi could not achieve in his mortal form, he hoped that his immense burial would enable him to thrive and rule in a life beyond death. Today, the Terracotta Army remains to be one of China's most popular tourist destinations, alongside the Great Wall of China and the Forbidden City. Now, at this point in our tale, you're probably wondering, what exactly happened to Xu Fu? Where did Xu Fu end up along with his giant fleet of approximately 60 ships? And with that said, many sources actually claim that since his disappearance in the year of 210 BC, many firmly believe that Xu Fu actually ended up in what would be modern-day Japan. His purported landing spot was actually known as the Qi Peninsula, in very close proximity to Japan's iconic Mount Fuji, which today is the largest mountain in the country itself. Many believe that Xu Fu, upon seeing this mountain, actually believed it to be Penglai, and did in fact dock there with his entire crew. Now, historically speaking, some sources actually give credibility to this particular theory of Xu Fu and his crew landing in modern-day Japan. Most of these sources claiming this theory actually point to a very important agricultural revolution, which occurred somewhere in the same time period as Xu Fu's last grand expedition. Due to the vast amount of farmers and supplies on Xu Fu's ships, he reportedly was able to bring advanced agricultural tools and techniques from China to an area where primitive farming and hunter-gathering had previously been the norm. Some historians say that this could have potentially triggered what would be the Iron Age of ancient Japan. Interestingly enough, there is further historical evidence supporting the fact that Xu Fu may have very well landed in Japan. Apparently, the use of Chinese as an official court language was dominant in this area of Japan and did last for many centuries. Apart from that, there were several Chinese influences mirrored in the architecture within the ancient capital of Nara, Japan. As a result of these fascinating histories and tales, Xu Fu has become a figure of spiritual and cultural importance. Throughout Japan, he is regarded as a god of farming and medicine, with many statues and temples erected in his honor. Some regard Xu Fu to actually be Jimmu Tenno, the mythical founder and first emperor of Japan, who, back in the 6th and 7th centuries BC, prevailed over several ancient tribes. Most sources state, however, that there is not enough conclusive evidence that Jimmu Tenno was even a real person, and that historically his timeline does not align with the lifespan and expeditions of Xu Fu himself. To this day, the disappearing fleet led by Xu Fu remains a true mystery, and even though we have a lot of interesting and possibly accurate theories, we don't really have the true whereabouts of this collection of ships. Unfortunately, we have no known remnants or wreckage of any of these ships, nor do we have the final resting place of Xu Fu himself. Likewise, the final resting place of the thousands on board are also unaccounted for, and that goes without saying that the exact landing spot is still unknown, with many speculating that perhaps Xu Fu and his fleet didn't even arrive in Japan at all. Despite these facts, the stories of Emperor Qin Shi Huang and his quest for immortality, and the mysterious travels of Xu Fu are still spoken in both China and Japan today. Alright guys, and that is a wrap on the mysterious voyage of Xu Fu in his quest for the elixir of life for Emperor Qin Shi Huang. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed learning about the history and mystery behind this interesting event, and hopefully you guys did enjoy the build as well. Now, I will say that this ship is not historically accurate by any means, but I did take inspiration from ancient Chinese junks, and of course the artistic portrayal of Xu Fu's ship itself. Just like all my other builds, this is still a no CC, no mod limited pack build, and will be available on the Sims 4 gallery for download. And as always, this has been towniesimbuilds, signing off. Thank you so much for watching, guys.